One of the things you sign up for when you're looking into covering pop culture and entertainment is, well, everything that makes ratings, which includes the news, believe it or not, despite the fact that it seems like nobody watches them these days. And these news programs are kind of important because they're supposed to be like the basis for how you get a broadcast license. Now, it's not always true, especially if you're a cable outlet, but when you're looking at the broadcast folks, they kind of want to make an impact. And right now, it's just Fox News and then a bunch of also ran. In fact, when you start to bring in the cable news folks, it gets even worse because, well, they're really not drawing anybody either. And the problem is that they're just not seen as credible. And I think you and I both agree they need to change it up. So believe it or not, a lot of them are trying, but a lot of their changes aren't really going to change much. And I think we have to talk about it, including a major one that's going to elevate one network and destroy another. And I'll tell you what that is in just a second. Let's go. Now, before we get started, just a quick reminder, I am trying to get to 50K by the end of the year, which means you should double check you're still subscribed to the channel. Go down there, look if the button's red and says subscribe, turn it gray, and then turn on all notifications if you haven't already, and then double check that you've already hit the like button because that helps as well. And when we get to the end of this, I want to hear your comments, so stick around till the end, please. It'll help as well. But what doesn't help is when somebody pretends they're making a big change and they're not. Like MSNBC, they're set an official date for MS Now name change from MSNBC to MS Now, which is a terrible diagnosis. And if you add a P to the front of that, PMS Now might only appeal to one like gender, right? Regardless of just how many jokes you can crack at the expense of these people here on Morning Joe with husband and wife news people hosting this program, they're not very credible and have been on record as very anti-Trump up until, well, recently when he won an election. And they tried to mend fences with Trump, and I'm not sure it ever really happened. And when they did that, they lost a lot of popularity with the extreme left, which seems to be the only place these people appeal to. So name change, no name change, mad cow, no mad cow, doesn't seem to matter. Mad cow's only there one day a week anyway, so when they cut the fat there and reduce the expense of her salary, is it going to make a difference? I don't really know. 25 million is 25 million, as anybody on a street corner will tell you. But moving on, we have the question out here, and this is coming from Deadline of all places. Can the media regain trust in an age of AI and misinformation? So NAB grapples with loaded question, and I will tell you, the easy answer to this is no. Nobody takes these people as credible anymore. And I mean, can you blame them? They've been misleading us for so very long that all of us just kind of ignore them now. Because once you get into the depth of a story or you get any of the facts, they've been lying outright to support a narrative rather than to actually inform you about anything. And the question isn't whether or not they can regain trust, it's whether they are worthy of trust ever again, which is an entirely different way of asking that question. None of that seems to matter as people kind of see the writing on the wall, especially if you're in the midst of change, whether it be Versant with MSNBC and the other ilk that's being spun off into a dying brand. You also have situations where you've already been traded to the other team and you just didn't know it yet. This fella here is John Dickerson. Now, he is among a lot of people that joined up with CBS thinking they were going to be able to lie and manipulate and service one political party over another. And boy, was he mistaken, because once the transaction completed between Paramount and Skydance, you had CBS News right over there with Skydance, and they wanted to basically take news and give you something that you could enjoy, you could appreciate, you might even be able to trust, because that's what they went out and hired Barry Weiss for. And Barry Weiss is something extra special. She really is a dedicated centrist in a way that's just remarkable. And especially in observing some of her interactions with people like Tim Pool and others. And for those that think she doesn't have enough experience to be in the position that she's in, you're wrong. She's been in the news business for a long time, starting her own brand and having it acquired for $150 million. Raise your hand if you've actually done that yourself. So it leaves us with a little bit of room for growth, at least with one particular network, a broadcast network of all things, CBS. Now, CBS News has had a terrible reputation because 60 Minutes is basically a DNC show that doesn't market itself that way. And probably should, at least to be fair to its audience. John Dickerson was never any, real news person as far as I'm concerned. And the fact that he's leaving CBS is incredibly telling. But that's just part of the story. He's left a job that's going to need to be filled. And the problem is there's already an obvious candidate, and that candidate isn't probably very satisfied where he is. Of course, I'm talking about Scott Jennings. You see, according to TV Insider, CBS News, shocker, CNN's MAGA pundit Scott Jennings is in talks to join the network. Now, I'm sure you've seen Scott before. There he is. And I'm going to tell you that this guy is a good newsman. And he's willing to tell the truth about what's actually going on in places like the White House. Do you know who doesn't normally do that? The mainstream news. Now, let's take another look at this in the bigger picture. If you bring in this guy, you immediately establish some credibility, which CNN is going to immediately lose. And that's okay. CNN has misused this guy, mistreated this guy for the better part of the last year and a half, at least, if not longer. And he is kind of the voice of reason that any news organization would be lucky to have. It's the only thing that makes the CNN nightly news or whatever the show is that he's on even remotely credible. I think it's Newsnight. Regardless, Barry Weiss is looking to poach pro-Trump CNN pundit Scott Jennings for CBS News. And look, this report isn't wrong. This is being reported across many, many outlets. And the fact that Scott could entertain this is not lost on anyone. The CBS News editor-in-chief, Barry Weiss, is reportedly keen on poaching conservative commentator Scott Jennings from CNN. There's a reason for that. He's popular, and he's accurate, and he's as unbiased as you're going to get on a lot of these cable and broadcast networks. So the two met at the Tiffany Network's New York headquarters last week, according to the news site Semaphore, which is an also pretender to the crown of trying to be somewhat centrist. Nobody believed them. They instead chose Barry Weiss, and Semaphore is just going to be floundering, I think, for as long as some billionaires decide to have a plaything. Anyway, the new CBS News boss reported overture to Scott Jennings comes during a time of flux at the network, a time where they actually need somebody. The Post reported on Monday that John Dickerson, co-anchor of CBS Evening News, is leaving the network at the end of the year. Huge gap. Dickerson, who will continue to co-anchor the nightly newscast with Maurice Dubois until his departure, is set to exit as the entire news division at CBS braces for a round of painful job cuts. Painful for CBS, but not painful for us. I have to say that CBS has been the least trusted news source in my household for a long period of time, even with PMSNBC and CNN out there. It's just, despite their complete lack of credibility, CBS was held to a higher standard because they originally did have news people there. And as they lost them to time, retirement, and death, things changed. And CBS basically became a hotbed of reporting things that are politically favorable to individuals and to one singular political party. I think it's fascinating to take a look at what you have in news and what you don't have. And I think Barry Weiss is kind of aiming to fix that. And I think that is a good thing. When you look at this, Jennings, a former George W. Bush administration staffer, as well as an ex-aide to Mitch McConnell, way back in the day when he could probably still talk and walk. He's gained cult status among conservatives for his feisty pro-Trump advocacy on CNN, which employs him as a contributor. Given that Jennings is not a full-time employee at the network, he's free to meet with anybody, according to a source with knowledge of the situation. So CNN's spokesperson declined to comment, and the Post has sought comment from Jennings, CBS News, and Weiss, which I'm assuming they did not receive. Legacy media outlets have been showing greater interest in Jennings as his popularity has grown online. Earlier this year, Los Angeles Times owner Patrick Soon-Shiong revealed that he reached out to the pundit about a possible role with the newspaper's Nat Next, which is a media venture that, I don't know how it will last very long. Last week, the Status newsletter reported that Weiss was mulling the possibility of bringing Fox News anchor Brett Baer aboard to helm the new evening news on CBS, something that I could actually see happening. And I think you could probably envision as well. He still looks pretty decent and presents himself in a professional way. He also asks very hard follow up questions that I'm sure a certain political party does not enjoy attempting to answer. Baer, the host of the nightly news wrap up show, The Special Report with Brett Baer, is under contract with Fox through the end of 2028. A network spokesman, person, whatever, declined to comment on that. Well, there's not much to comment on if he doesn't have a way out of his contract, but maybe not. News Corp probably doesn't want to present Skydance, a competitor, with an opportunity, so I think 2028 would be the earliest exit for Baer. David Ellison owned Paramount Skydance, hired Weiss for the top editor job at CBS News with a mandate of making the network more balanced and fact-based, something that I haven't seen in news for a very long time, and you probably haven't either. But at the end of the day, I think that's where the difference is made. And it's one of the things I've said in multiple entries on channels throughout the internet in our particular sphere and fellowship. I believe that if anybody can change and hold its change and make inroads in their change, it's CBS News. Could you just imagine if something was a lot more centrist, like 60 Minutes, and they were willing to ask some tough follow up questions to somebody like Word Salad Lady, who was running for president, instead of trying to take an answer from a different question to try to present her as somewhat intelligent, which was a lie, which they got busted for, which we don't want to have happen again. And I promise you, Barry Weiss doesn't want to see it again. So, with all that being said, what do you think? Do you think that there's a chance CBS News can change? Do you think adding the right components and people and having the right editorial direction will change things? Do you think Scott Jennings is an answer to a bigger question, or at least part of an answer to a bigger question? Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments section down below. Don't forget to hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. Be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya! Probably on, well, YouTube.